Ray the CPA here. I wanted to talk to you, give you a quick update on the PPP Flexibility Act, the Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act. So, I am pretty active on TikTok, so I had said about a week ago. All right, so just a quick update on the Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act passed in the House. I told you guys then, U.S. Senate is looking to fast track it. Should hear something next week. Bang bang. When it passed the House, that it had a great chance of going through the Senate, which it did. So now here we are, and it's passed through the Senate. It's expected to be signed by the president. There's no foreseeable problem with the president signing. So what does this all mean? So initially, the CARES Act that was passed back in April, which was $310 billion in funding, that act had a portion of it that related to paycheck protection. Okay, so that paycheck protection now, as you'll recall, I've done a few videos on the Paycheck Protection Program. I'll slide them through here so you'll see them on this video. But basically, this allowed relief for small business owners to continue their payroll to keep people employed. All right, so it was organizations, even tax exempt, that had 500 or less employees and fit the SBA's guidelines of small businesses. So up to 10 million per borrower was legal. Now, previously this Paycheck Protection Program had different limits than now. So as the CARES Act wrote, up to 75% of the loan had to be related to payroll in order to have the complete loan forgiven, right? Also, you had 8 weeks from receiving the funds to spend those funds, right? Not a very long period. So it also extended to self-employed people. I've also done videos on that. Anyhow, the changes now are going to make things a bit easier to borrow and a little bit easier to get forgiveness. Now, something to note, okay, and I want you guys to pay close attention. As of right now, as of you seeing this video, there's about $126 billion left. So you need to apply. The deadline is June 30th. The deadline for spending it was June 30th. Now, so the deadline is moved, but the deadline for applying is June 30th, okay? So what's changed? What's different, right? All right. We had initially, before the House bill, the PPP Flexibility Act, we had basically you could get your loan forgiven, your entire loan forgiven, if you used 75% of it on payroll. That's changed. And now there was kind of a grading scale the way that happened. Now, the Small Business Association, in the original act, there was no language to specify if you don't use 75%, you completely lose the ability for forgiveness. But the SBA added guidance on that. So now the law has changed that 75% to 60%. So what does that mean? Let's use a real life example. So let's say, and I know this because of the way the law is written and because of the 11-page loan forgiveness application that's out. I don't remember what line it is, but it clearly says on that form, the formula for finding out what your total forgiveness, so the total loan, the formula is dividing your payroll costs, which include total payroll costs, which include pensions and savings, the other things that you have to pay. Your total cost for payroll is all included. So you divide that amount by 75%, and that will give you your total loan forgiveness. So for example, if I have payroll costs in my company, in Rayco, I have payroll costs of 50 grand. If I divide 50 grand by 75, don't multiply by 75, you get a different result. If you multiply 50 by 75%, you get 35. You don't want that. If I divide 50 by 75, that's how I calculate my total loan. So if I do that, I get 67 grand roughly, okay? So what that means is I have my payroll cost of 50, I take out a loan of 67 total, and I can get the entire thing forgiven because I use 17 for my other costs, my qualified mortgage, utility costs for my business. I have another video on that. So there'll be a lot of videos you can click on if you're just seeing this one, okay? So let me say that again. The way the Paycheck Protection Program used to work, 75% has to be used for payroll. So if I borrow 67%, or pardon me, if I borrow $67,000 and $50,000 of that amount is used for payroll, then I can get an entire loan forgiven, okay? So it's something to think about when you're applying for the loan. Now you have the tools. If you haven't already applied, you have the tools to apply for a larger amount. Now, that's the way it used to be. Think about this. Now it's 60%. So what does that mean? What's the difference there? Okay. If I have $50,000 in payroll costs and I divide that by 60%, I now have a total loan of $83,000. Okay? 50,000 divided by 0.6 or 60% gives me $83,000. That means $23,000 can be used for my business. That's the first change. Second change, I used to have 8 weeks in which to spend all of that money, right? So for many of us, our businesses are already behind, so that wouldn't be hard, right? Because you've already incurred these costs and you're already behind. Now you'll have 24 months from when you receive the money as opposed to 8 weeks from when you received the money. So I apply, my internal application is approved at the bank or my lender, and then I'm actually approved by the SBA. I get the funds, now starts my 8 weeks. That's how it used to be. Going forward, all of that, I now get my funds, my actual funds received. I now have 24 weeks as long as I don't extend past the end of this year, December 31st. So that's the second change, okay? So June 30th has moved to December 31st. It's still a qualified small business. What was the last thing? All right, I've told you how much is left. I'm just reading my notes right here. I told you how much is left. I told you the change from 75% to 60%. Sorry. So here's the last part, the cliff. There's a cliff now. If, let's say that you apply for a loan, you apply for $83,000, that means that 60% of that loan, or you're approved and you have the money, $83,000. So let's say that you now have $50,000, or let's say you have $45,000 in payroll costs. Well, that's below the 60% threshold. So they call it a cliff, because if you don't at least make the 60%, if 60% of your loan is not used, at least 60% is not used for payroll costs, none of it is forgiven. And then the last piece, as I understand it in this bill, is instead of this being a 2-year loan at 1%, this is a 5-year loan. So it's a 5-year payback, even if you don't get the forgiveness. So let's do a quick recap. Let's just talk about what's going on right now. So the Paycheck Protection Program, because of the Flexibility Act, the PPP Flexibility Act, there's $126 billion left. That's one. 2, 60%, at least 60% of your loan has to be for payroll costs. Payroll costs mean my salary, my withholdings, everything that's related to me as an employee that works for you. Okay? That has to be spent in order to get 100% forgiveness. If you don't spend that, you get none of it forgiven. But again, it's a 5-year loan, 1% for 5 years. So weigh that out when you're making your decision. You have 24 weeks from when you receive that money to spend it, as long as that doesn't go over December 31st. All right? And again, the Paycheck Protection Program applies to tax-exempt organizations as well, but mostly for small businesses. The loans can be up to $10 million. All right? Okay. That is your, what is today, Thursday? That's your Thursday update. Ray the CPA, out. Like, subscribe if this was useful to you. Leave a comment, leave a question. Let me know what you're curious about, and we can go over them. All right, take care. Bye-bye.